So I got in bed and just indulge in all my self-pity around, everything and feeling bad about myself and just indulge myself. And then what I noticed is I did it in the morning and then by like noon, I was like, okay, I'm ready to do something else because I allowed myself to fully emote. Welcome to The Way of the Muse, a podcast for women who want to create richness in every area of their lives, from business and career to lifestyle, relationships, family, purpose, and fulfillment. I'm Gigi Sage.
And I'm McKenna Sage. We're a mother-daughter coaching team, and combined, we've spent over 4 decades helping people create their best and most fully expressed lives. If you're ready to step into your bigger dreams with ease, fun, and flow, you're in the right place. Let's get into the episode.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Hello, McKenna.
We're having sparkly earring day today.
Yeah.
For anyone who's watching, you can see that Gigi and I both wore our sparkly earrings today.
Yeah,
we didn't even coordinate that.
That's because it's spring. So
yes,
yeah,
it's
time to wear sparkly earrings and feel excited about, but you have spring all the time, right? In San Diego. So
kind of, but it's still really beautiful. Yeah. Right now, weather's getting warmer and people think it's always warm here. It is not always warm. It is definitely
it's true.
We don't get snow, but it's always chilly here.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. I don't think about that because
like, pack sweaters, pack jackets. People are like, what? They get here and they're freezing.
Yeah.
Yes. So today we want to talk about if you're going through a hard time, which I went through a hard time not that long ago. And so I was thinking it'd be so great because we talk to a lot of our clients and of course friends and support them through challenging periods. And what I found is not everyone has that kind of support, or I don't know, even if they do, it's like easy to forget all your tools and all your everything when you're going through something that feels like it's been going on for a while. So we really wanted to record this episode so that you can listen to it when you're going through a hard time, but also that you can share it with someone in your life who might be going through some challenges right now.
Yeah. I think it's a really great idea. So people can, like you said, if someone's going through a hard time, you can just share this episode with them, right?
Yeah, they can put on their sparkly earrings and listen to this episode. So we wanted to start with some just kind of personal stories of challenging times we've gone through either recently or some time ago. So the one I was referring to was really around my health. So the first trimester of my pregnancy was definitely challenging, as it is for many women. I had really intense fatigue, could barely get out of bed some days. I was nauseous. I had food aversions. It's a very weird combination to be hungry all the time and nauseous, but not want to eat anything. So, yeah, that was hard. And then I had a lot of headaches and migraines. And so even though I'm so excited, of course, about the pregnancy, I was also very challenged physically and then mentally and emotionally, because when you're going through something like that over a long period of time, you start to just feel a little worn down. And that's something I've noticed in general because I have some kind of intermittent health stuff I've had in my life. Thankfully, I'm very healthy overall, but just some chronic things. And when that really flares up, I feel like there's just kind of this haze over everything and it starts to feel difficult to think straight. Gigi, what about you? What's a challenging time that you've gone through when you would have liked to have a podcast episode like this?
Well, one time I can think of that was a really hard time was when you were in high school and we moved back to Austin after a couple of years of being in New York City. And that was a really difficult time for me for several reasons. I had 3 kids of my 5 still living at home, and we were going through a lot of challenges financially, many other things that were going on. And I was struggling with chronic fatigue at that time where I could barely get out of bed. And so it was definitely a time where, I wish I would have had more support at that season in my life. And I'll talk about that later. Because if I was to go back to myself and, talk to myself, I would say definitely get more support.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So for those of you listening, you might be going through a hard time personally, you know, your kids keep getting sick, or everyone in the household's been sick for weeks or months and you're just exhausted, or you're having challenges in your partnership or your marriage, or maybe a loved one isn't well, or someone you love passed away recently and you're grieving. So it could be on the personal side. It may be more in your career business, right, Gigi?
Yeah. So, sometimes we find when one of our clients is really having a challenging time with an employee, or maybe lots of turnover in their business. Maybe your boss is giving you a really hard time, or you're worried about losing your job, which, right now a lot of people are, or
Yeah.
you're just feeling stressed and strapped around finances. That's also financial stress is, a very, very, very difficult time for people.
Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest, right? Health and
Yeah.
finances.
Health and finances. Yeah.
Yeah. And then a lot of times we see too, and we've experienced that you might have a lot of different challenges stacking up at once. And it sort of feels like, oh, I just can't get a break. So you might be feeling a little depressed, or like you can't really regulate your emotions, or you might even be at the point where you're just feeling a little bit numb. So if if this has been going on for a while, then you might be wishing that there was something you could do to just sort of like snap your fingers and snap out of it. And of course, we can't promise that, but we are going to share some tools and some perspectives today that have helped us when we're going through challenging times, and then things that you might be able to do to ease some of those feelings of upset or depression or overwhelm a little bit. So, and who knows, things may lighten up sooner than you think. So, Gigi, I would love for you to start us off today and share some of the tools and practices that we have for our listeners.
Well, one that I use, and that is, I think it's simple and is just know this will pass. Nothing lasts forever. That's one thing we know in life, right? And the only thing that is certain is change. And so we all go through those ups and downs. And I look at it sometime as just it's a season in life. There are times that are really, really great, and there are times that are not so great. And that's part of our human experience. So your mind will try to convince you that it's going to be like this forever. But I promise you, it's not always going to be this way. That's the thing, is to really know this is a moment in time. And how can you be calm in the storm and relax into what is happening instead of resisting it? And that, I think, is just that right there, is how do you relax into it instead of resist it? Because if it's happening and there's really nothing you can do about it in this moment, then to calm yourself down and go, okay, this will pass. And the more I just give in and yield to this, then I know I'll come out the other side of it.
You really taught me this with like when you get sick, because so often when we get sick, we're like, oh, I don't want to be sick, right? I want to just get over this quickly and get back into whatever. And you always told me if you resist it, then it's going to take longer. It's not going to move through you as quickly. And so you taught me to really, when you get sick, just totally surrender to it, crawl in bed, relax completely, feel terrible. And in my experience, it's really been true that the more I let go and I don't resist it, it feels like it does move through faster. It's like, it's kind of sometimes maybe more intense in a way, because we're not sort of like pushing it away and trying to not feel it, but then you get better faster, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I raised your kids that way. Anytime you were sick, I would just say, first of all, is relax into it, and it can move through you when there's not resistance. You still may stay sick for, who knows, 3-5 days, but there's not that resistance going on all the time, but I just was sick. And remember, I called you and I was like, I don't want to be sick.
She still does it. I'm like, do you need me to tell you the thing that you always told me? Sometimes we still have to hear it. That's why we're recording this episode.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
It is like that. But it is like that saying that, we often share, and it's said frequently in personal development, which is what you resist persists. And that's just a really easy way to remind yourself, like if I'm resisting something here, then often it holds on longer, or I don't know why that is. Do you know why that is? It just seems to be like a law of human nature or something. Yeah.
I'm sure there's some study or something.
It's beyond our pay grade here.
Yeah, exactly.
So we just observe. We're like, we just see these patterns in humans and we're going to share them. So what's another one, Gigi? So first of all, we said, know that this is going to change, be the calm, don't resist it, give into it. What else?
Be kind to yourself. That's it. I always hug myself. I just, hug myself and say, Gigi, it's going to be okay. You got this. And it's all right. It's all right. And, that is, and I even put my arms around myself and I really, really hug myself. And there's something about that is calming and feels good. What do you do, McKenna?
To be kind to myself?
Yeah.
It's a good question. I think I usually ask for acknowledgement.
Oh, because you're the words of
affirmation and the love languages, and acknowledgement's one of our skills and that we teach and we've talked about in the podcast. So I'll usually ask Sunny, my husband, to I'll be like, can I be acknowledged? Can I be acknowledged for relaxing and stopping everything and really letting go here? So it helps me to hear it from somebody else. Or I'll try to do it with myself, just write it down or something like that and just be like, okay, it's kind of like you're doing with talking to yourself, but for some reason it helps me to either write it down or to hear it from somebody else. And so I just make that request because it's like, okay, something in me can get that I'm doing the best I can. And I think that's the important thing with being kind to yourself, is that you're probably doing the best you can. Right.
Yeah. And, maybe my hugging myself, because I'm rubbing my arms here, and hugging myself, my love language is touch. I've never thought about that. So maybe that's why it really soothes me.
That's really interesting to think about. What is your love language and how can you give that to yourself? And if you have no idea what we're talking about, by the way, there's a free test online called The 5 Love Languages. And it's also a book. I do not know the author off the top of my head, but we can link to it in the show notes. So you can take this little test and find out, what is your love language? In other words, how do you feel and receive love from other people? And it's really interesting because many of you are familiar with this, but mine is words of affirmation, as mentioned. So above all, if I hear someone say things to me that are loving or acknowledging, then that feels like, oh, I feel so loved, right? And for you, Gigi, you're saying touch.
Yeah, mine is touch. Yeah.
Someone gives you a foot massage.
Yeah. So if you've never done it, you should definitely do it. And it's also wonderful to know your partner's love language, to know how they love to be loved, and also your children.
So interesting. Yeah, because you might be showing love the way you want to receive love, but it might not be your partner's love language or your kid's love language at all. So it's fascinating stuff. Okay, well, another one. So we talked about what so far? We talked about knowing this will pass, not resisting, being kind to yourself. And really, again, we're going to share a lot of different things here. It's just to kind of pick and choose what's one thing you can take. So the other one is getting connected. And you talked earlier a little bit, Gigi, about asking for support. And what I'll say about this is that we see this a lot in our coaching, right? Is that a lot of the time in our programs and our groups, people start to isolate themselves a little bit when they're going through a difficult time. They pull back, they're not as connected, they don't show up as much for calls. And that's before we really have worked with them for a long time, because we always tell them that's really the time to lean in. That's really the time to actually be more present.
Yeah. And that's, is something that I wish if I could go back and tell my younger self when I was going through that hard time that I talked about in the beginning of the episode. If I could go back, I would just say, Gigi, go out there and get support, find someone to talk to. You don't have to hold all of this on your own, because I really, really helped way, way, way too much. And it was very, very, very difficult. And if I just would have had more support, it would have made a huge difference for me.
I'm curious with that one, Gigi, how would you have told yourself to do that? Because I'm sure you were sitting there like, I don't even know how I would get support. Is there anything more specific you would have said, like how to approach that? You're a single mom, 3 kids at home.
I think it would have been getting in therapy or hiring a coach or, having someone that was outside my world that I could really, really talk to about everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I just think people are sitting there again, not knowing how to get support. Right. So to really be able to think that through, I mean, so much of it for us is coaching, or it might be therapy for someone or something like that, but really having that. And you might have more support available to you also in your family or friends or loved ones that you're not really reaching out and tapping into, right? That's often, sometimes we see that as well with people, is that they just, again, sort of isolate and they're not reaching out. Who was it? I was just with a friend the other day and she said, yeah, I just started calling my friends and telling them I was going through this stuff. And they were like thanking me for calling them, because they said, normally we don't hear from you about this stuff, or we don't know what's going on in your world. Like, thank you for actually reaching out. And I thought that was such a beautiful sentiment,
Yeah. It's great.
Yeah. And those conversations don't have to be about solving anything, right? You can even tell the other person, I don't want you to fix or solve anything. Can you just listen and be a sounding board for me so I can talk? Because I think that's super important, is just having a place that we can go and share and talk about whatever's going on.
Yeah, this is a huge one. And, we do this for each other. And it's one of the things we do with our ladies in our mastermind. So they can send us a voice note anytime, day or night, just to share whatever's coming up in their lives and careers and businesses. And we really encourage this because it gives them a place that, they can just get it all out. They can share it, or they can be heard. And, then there's no judgment, there's no advice. And it already, I think just doing that, a lot of times they start to solve their own issues when they do that. And sometimes that's true for me. I know I just have to talk out loud and talk to someone. And then I start to see, I just can't do it in my head,
Yeah.
And, for us in the mastermind, what we do is sometimes we just leave it at that. And other times we actually do kind of support them, and give them, or not kind of support them, we support them a lot, right? And give them some really clear action steps or what's the next steps to take. But, often first it's just about having that neutral space to be heard. There's something about, like you said, sitting there and sharing and then letting someone know, I really don't want you to solve this. I would just love for you just to listen and be space for me, which is really, really powerful for people.
Yeah, that's really what the process that we've talked about on the podcast before, that I developed in my relationship with Sunny, called What's on Your Heart. That's really what that practice is about. It's not a dialogue, actually. It's a sharing practice where you really take your time and each person asks the other person what's on your heart, and they really open up and go deep about whatever is there. And there's no crosstalk at all. Like, no, you can say, tell me more or something like that, but there's no crosstalk. And sometimes one person can share for 30 minutes, an hour, or something like that. And sometimes we'll do a shorter version too. But it's so amazing because at the end of that time, the other person has not given you one iota of advice. They haven't jumped in on anything, but you feel so much lighter. And interestingly, we also feel so much more connected. So I'm trying to find the link because I didn't have it ready, but I think we have a freebie where we outline this entire process that you can get at wayofthemuse.com/connection. And that, we'll link it in the show notes as well. That is, I think, for couples and for, it could also be friends or something like that, but it can be really powerful because otherwise we have these habitual ways that we communicate with each other, or one person or the other person may just have the tendency to jump in and try to solve things, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Once again, that's wayofthemuse.com/connection. You can get that full process to really because otherwise it can be hard. You might ask somebody not to jump in and solve things, but they might not know how.
Mhm.
And so really having that space and time to just share. And then the other thing is not isolating yourself can really look different ways. And that could also be going out and doing fun things with other people. So making yourself get out of bed or get out of the house and go meet up with some friends or go dancing or do something that changes up the energy and really shifts your perspective. And when you're going through a hard time, this is like the last thing I think most of us want to do. But if you've ever had that experience, like if you get yourself up and out and make yourself do it, a lot of times you feel so much better.
Yeah, that's a great one. I even find that because we work from home also, right? So you get busy and you're working so hard and maybe you don't feel 100%. And that's for me always. If I just get out of the house, then I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like a completely different person, because we're so much in our house and in our things because we work
There's
and
a
live in our
world out
homes.
there.
Yeah, exactly. There's something
Oh,
other than
right.
Zoom.
Exactly. Oh gosh, everybody experienced that during COVID, right? They were like,
Right.
what? This is a totally different experience of life. And it's actually, I find that it's for some people almost like a muscle that they stopped exercising. And it's been harder for them since COVID to get themselves up and out of the house because we all got used to just being in our homes and our social connection being on screens. So yeah, that's an interesting one. Gigi, I think you definitely have to do the honors and share this next one because this is like if I had to say the crowning Gigi, I don't know what you would call this, but every client we have would be like, oh yes, Gigi has taught me this one and it's been such an invaluable tool for me. So tell us about quitting.
Yeah. So what I recommend is, quit for a day or an evening or a weekend or 2 hours if you're really, really feeling bad. And, I discovered this early in my personal development. I can't remember why, but I was just like having all these feelings. And one day I just thought, I'm just going to get in bed and feel sorry for myself. I remember I can visually see this. And so I got in bed and just indulge in all my self pity around, everything and feeling bad about myself and just indulge myself. And then what I noticed is I did it in the morning. And then by like noon, I was like, okay, I'm ready to do something else because I allowed myself to fully emote, and you can do things like cry, you can watch sad movies, write down everything that's terrible in your life, get it all out. And, the funny thing is so much of the time when you allow yourself to do this, then things look completely different when you wake up in the next morning or even that same day. And, your energy lightens and your perspective is different. I even do this if I'm really having like a difficult time. My mind is crazy. I'll sit down, I'll journal all my crazy thoughts, crazy, 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 fully indulge myself in it. And then just by getting it out and onto paper, I start to feel differently. And then I always make sure I tear the paper up. I think, if I died today, I wouldn't want anybody to read this.
All the terrible things she says about her children.
Or whatever, right? And then when my kids come, they have to go through my stuff and they're like, oh my gosh, yeah.
We had a crazy woman for a mother.
Oh, we didn't know it all those years. Of course you know. So this one I have taught to thousands of women around the world. And when they do it, they're like, oh my gosh, this really, really works. And I just have to say, one of the reasons and one thing I noticed is that often we feel like kind of this cloud hanging over us and these kind of, bad feelings or something's going on in the background while we're living life. And if we don't attend to it, then what happens, it becomes our life. And so when I started to notice this and saw if I attend to it by completely allowing it to go through me, then what happens is it clears from there. But if I don't attend to it, then I think it is my life. I believe the story.
It's a really interesting perspective. Yeah. And we both use this one all the time. And we get
We're in
We
bed
get,
most of the time. Yeah.
oh yeah. Well, I mean, we work in bed, our clients will tell you, but we get voice notes from our clients all the time or messages from them being like, I quit, I was feeling terrible. So I just quit for the day and it was so great. So this is one of those ones people really love and latch on to. I will say though, if you have a partner or kids, then you're probably going to want to tell them something.
Mhm.
So I usually tell Sunny like, hey, I'm just going to lay in bed and feel sorry for myself tonight. Nothing's wrong. You taught me this, Gigi. I just need to feel bad and I'll be fine in the morning. So the main thing there is that they're not like worried about you or thinking they need to get in there and try to make you feel better, which is naturally, of course, what we want to do. But you just say, I just need some space. I need a few hours. It'll be fine. It'll pass. And, if you have kids, you might have to hire a sitter for a few hours so that you can lock yourself in a room and have that time to yourself. It's like, don't just hire sitters for date night, or bring a friend over or something like that. See if they'll watch the kids for a little while to really give yourself that space and that time to yourself.
Yeah, it sounds crazy, but it works. It absolutely works.
Yeah.
Yeah. So another thing you can do if you want to take that even further is we have an exercise that's very powerful. It's called the releasing ritual. And same thing, I've just had, I've shared this with thousands of people around the world. And it's much more, let's say, intense. It's a process where you really take a full day, ideally, and you get all your frustrations, your resentments, your anger. You get that up, you write it out, and you let go of them. And it's really been a game changer for so many clients. I've had people who have had really challenging breakups with a partner, and they, have, been carrying this around for years, and they really, really want to find another partner. And they do the process, and then 2 weeks later they find the man of the man of their dreams or the woman of their dreams or whatever. And so it can just be it's a game changer for moving things up and out of you and letting go. It definitely has a specific way you're supposed to do it. So we have a video and a very clear way to do it, and I highly recommend if you do it, to follow it completely, because it will make a really big impact on you, and it'll just lighten up any burden that you have hugely.
Yeah, I mean, I know you've told me stories. I've recommended this to clients as well. And I just had a client not that long ago who did this actually around the exact kind of scenario you were talking about, Gigi. Mostly, I mean, other things came up in the exercise, but a lot of what came up was around a former partnership. And she was having a really hard time finding, a great relationship, and was kind of losing some hope or some steam around that. And she did this exercise. She went really deep, and it brought up a lot, but she really moved through it, let it go. And within a short period of time, I want to say a few weeks, she met her partner. So we definitely see that. And then that's just one use, though. I remember you telling me about a client who did it, and it really like around her childhood. I'm sure many have done it around that, right? But can you speak to that a little bit? Just like letting go of old stuff that's weighing you down. So, for example, clients who've done it around, just stuff with their families or whatever that might be.
Yeah, I had a client that, had a really rough childhood, and we'd been working together for a while. And so she did it, and it was just so relieving because she really, really went in and got deep and really, went into all the pain and trauma and let go of it. And it just freed her up so much, because it used to be like a pattern of communication. She would talk about it all the time. And after she did the process, she never talked about it again to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's powerful. Because we all know people who have those stories, right? Those things that they repeat and repeat and repeat. And you might have even noticed some of those in yourself. It's like, what's the story you tell yourself that holds you back, right? Or the thing about why you are this way or whatever. And this exercise really gives you a chance to go super deep and let that go for good. And I have to say, it's like very different than therapy, right? Where we're not therapists, we're coaches, but it is like, I've done it myself, and it's like doing a year of therapy in one session or something, because you get so much off your chest, and then you can really let it go and move on. It's so powerful on so many levels. So, that process, like Gigi said, is too much to share in this episode. So what we've done is recorded a video about this. It walks you through it along with a worksheet that you can download. So you can download those at wayofthemuse.com/letting-go, wayofthemuse.com/letting-go. And we'll link that in the show notes as well. So we have one more sort of tip or perspective we want to share with you. But again, I just want to say, don't let yourself go into overwhelm around these, because we shared a lot of different things in a short period of time here. And what we always say is to pick one or two principles or practices that we share and apply it, right? You can listen to this episode again and again if you need to, but even one shift can make a huge difference. Even if you just said, I'm going to stop resisting and really surrender into the challenging time right now, or I'm going to quit for the evening and just totally indulge, that could change everything. You could feel totally different, right? So different things are going to stand out to different people who are listening right now, depending on what's right for you at this time. So Gigi, this is a fun one, this last tip we have. So what is it you always say about putting on your big girl panties?
Okay, so this is probably politically incorrect, but this is what I say to my clients, and so I'm sorry.
You've been doing this for 40 years. You get a free pass on politically incorrect, because it's always changing.
Someone, yeah. But this one is also, it's great if you take it on. When I'm coaching women, a lot of times I will tell them, okay, it's time to put your good big girl panties on. Yeah. And even though that sounds like a really silly thing to say, right? But women, they love it because it gives, this image in their mind, my big girl panties, that means I'm going to get in there. I'm going to be superwoman or whatever. And so later they come back to me and they say, okay, I put my big girl panties on and I did it. And they're so proud that they just went for it, and whatever it was that they had been putting off or feeling stuck around, or they also even come back and say, okay, I didn't put my big girl panties on this morning.
I was not a big girl.
Yeah. And if you don't care for that language, you can say, strap on your boots. There's actually a saying, I don't know the specific saying, whatever works for you. The main idea here is to shift out of that victim mentality and into your superwoman persona. It's like, Superman, go into that phone booth and put on that different part of you and step out into the world and conquer and do what you need to get done.
Superwoman must have some really amazing panties going on. We didn't even know underneath her costume.
Yeah, exactly. She probably has some pretty hot lingerie, actually.
Yeah,
so.
Probably. Well, that could be your big girl panties there.
That's
so,
right.
Yeah, I love that, because there are often things in life or in our careers or our businesses that we just don't want to do, right? Things we don't want to face into, or we keep procrastinating on. But as long as we're avoiding them, it just gets harder and harder and harder. So this is a fun way to remind yourself to just buckle up and go for it. And you'll be so happy that you did. So I want to recap, because we've covered so many different things today, just what were each of these, so that you can go back and again, pick one to start with and see what are you going to apply in your life this week to just see, does it make a difference for you? So number one was knowing that this will pass and relaxing into what's happening instead of resisting. Number two was to be kind to yourself, give yourself a hug and talk sweetly to yourself. Number three was to get connected. So instead of isolating, to really reach out, ask for support. We gave you some different practices around this, like the what's on your heart, or you can just call a friend or a therapist. Then Gigi taught us about quitting for the day or the evening or the weekend. We went through a high-level overview of the releasing ritual, which again, you can download at wayofthemuse.com/letting-go. And then Gigi taught us about your big girl panties, or shifting from, let's say, the victim mentality to the superhero. So many great tools here, many great practices. And I feel like this is great. I forget a lot of these, and when we're going through a hard time, then we can listen to our own podcast episode here.
Yeah.
I'll send it to you, Gigi, next time and be like,
okay,
this
good.
is going to do the work for me.
Right. We don't have to have that conversation again, right?
Do you remember when we told people this? Maybe we need to take our own medicine, right? So anyway, just any closing thoughts, Gigi, for someone who's going through challenges and feels like, just keeps going.
Yeah, again, like we said, just know it will pass. I think that's the biggest one. Know it. Now, change always happens, and then the other thing is remember there are seasons in life. I think that's a really, really big one. Different seasons. So, and then all the things that we said. Just there are times in life where I was at a dinner last night and talking about. There was a young woman in her 40s, and then there's me who I'm in my 60s, and another one it's late 50s, and talking about just where we are in our lives. And the woman in her 40s was telling me to do something, and the woman that was close to 60 was like, you have no idea. It's a different season, it's a different time. So I think you have to really own wherever you are in your life and the season of your life and be okay with it.
Yeah, that's been one of the things you've taught me too. That's been so helpful and that we share with our clients. And they're just like, it just gives them relief to know like, okay, this is not, I think something about that language of seasons tells us like, it's not going to last forever. And this is just a time. We all know that the seasons change and the seasons pass. And it kind of puts some container around it. So it's not this ongoing forever thing. So that's beautiful. Thank you. And thank you all for listening and sharing this with the people in your life who need it right now. We really, really appreciate that. It helps us spread the word about this podcast and just spread, some of these things that we really feel called to share. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. See you next time.
See you next time.
That's our episode for today, but let's not make it the end of our love story. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and think of some women in your life you'd love to share it with. And if you want to learn more about our events and programs, visit wayofthemuse.com. See you next time.